So let's continue with our facial features here and talk about eyes. Okay, so that's generally the progression. I'm going to go in his nose, then eyes, then mouth last. Okay, so in our discussion of eyes, again, you have so many options in how you want to achieve that. You can do realistic eyes. This person chose to kind of do just a depressed sort of closed eye sort of feeling. Okay. You could think about eyes as a symbol, right? So thinking about, we often think of eyes as the gateway to the soul or whatever. So this is a mask that I made last year as a demo where I put little bits of pottery as eyes, all right? Or we could think about how masks are actually maybe used when worn, where we cut out some eye spaces. All right, so this artist chose to create some eye spaces there. You can choose to do that as well. Create a negative space there or cutouts. Totally okay. I do want to show you how to sculpt a basic eye shape, though, if that's something that you want to do. Okay, so again, first of all, I want to score just really gently in that eye area. Okay. You know, a little thing with this, just like when I was talking about our cheekbones, we probably want to work on both sides at the same time, especially with your eye, because you're going to be working, smoothing. And if you do one eye perfectly and then go to the other side and the size is a little bit off, it's pretty noticeable if one eye is a little bit bigger than the other eye. So I would suggest working on these at the same time so you have about the same amount of clay for both eyes. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit bigger chunk than I think I need. Try to split that into 2 even parts. And I think this is going to be way too much. That's probably about double what I need. So the first step is actually to make the eyeball. Okay, and when I think about our eye, we actually don't see about, I don't know, 80% of our eyeball, right? Our eyeball goes back into our head. When we're sculpting, we're not going to sculpt the whole eyeball, but we do want to try to achieve that feeling of roundness. Okay, so we're going to be sculpting that front, whatever, fourth of your eyeball that you actually see. Okay, so imagine that, your eye socket actually goes back. We're going to be just trying to sculpt that front part. Okay, and when I think about the eye, I'm also thinking about sculpting from the back forward. So the eyeball is the thing that's furthest back, and then I'm going to sculpt the eyelids. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start with clay. I'm going to try to get to 2 even bits and just create a little ball. Okay, good. This one's a little bit bigger. Just want to get those to be about the same size. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and I'm just going to work on one eye so we can check that out. Okay, so with this, I do want to start to kind of compress the sides here. Just pinching the sides and getting myself kind of a disc shape. Right now, this is my eyeball. I do want to retain that roundness on the top. Okay, so the back can be flat because it's going on my mask, but I do want to keep roundness to the top. So I'm just pinching the sides, getting to about the shape that I want, and I can continue to test. That looks pretty good. Okay, it's gonna look super weird to start. That's okay. All right, so I don't know if you can see this. I have just a gentle roundness to the top. It's flat on the back, and that's pretty good. So I'm just gonna give this a light scoring on the back and a light slip. I don't want slip to be oozing out everywhere because it's really hard to clean up later. So just a little bit to ensure that that's going to connect. Okay, and right kind of in the middle of my eye socket there. A general rule I like to think about, and this isn't precise for everybody, but again, just a general facial proportion sort of thing, is that your face is going to be 5 eyes wide. So I'm going to kind of check out the mirror here. So if I measure an eye width, which for me is about 2 fingers if I'm looking at the mirror, right? In between my eyes, there's going to be that same width. this eye, and then on the side of my eye to the side of my face. Okay, so it's going to be about 5 eyes wide. So as I think about making my eyes, I'm going to try to keep that proportion about right. What I tend to see a lot is either that the eyes are really spaced apart and it looks really goofy, right? You have really small eyes and they're really spaced far apart, or they're really close together, and that tends to look pretty goofy too. So this might take a few tries. You might try it, cut it off, try it again, and that's totally okay. Okay, so my eyeball is down. I've created a nice roundness to that. Now it's time for the eyelids, okay? So I'm gonna grab some extra clay, and now here the eyelids are just gonna be 2 coils of clay that I'm going to smooth into the face. Okay, so let's try the bottom eyelid first. Okay, so for this, grab a little bit of clay. Okay, and I'm just going to start it as a ball in my hand, and then I'm just going to slowly start to create a coil in my hand. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the table, and that's going to help me finish my coil shape. Now, when I'm making my eyelid, I want to create a coil that's really thin on one end and it's a little bit fatter on the other end. All right, and the thin part is going to go in the inner eye socket here. That's where my tear duct would maybe be. Okay, so nice and smooth, nice and thin at one point. Okay, now for this, I don't need to score really at this point. Because I'm going to be working really delicately and I don't want to really create more work for myself cleaning up, but I am going to just give my face a light spray. And now here's where the eyelid is going to overlap your eyeball, right? Because if you look at a mirror or a picture of yourself, when you look, you don't see your whole eyeball. The eyelid actually covers some of your eyes. So I'm going to lay this down so that it overlaps and covers my eyeball. Okay, now you'll see I have a ton of extra clay here. That's okay. I'm just going to kind of swipe off some extra. All right, and what I don't want to do at this point is really alter this top nice smooth line. Okay, but I do want to smoothen the eyelid down into the plane of the face. Okay, so I see my clay is drying out a bit. Get a little spray. Okay, so I'm just going to very carefully pull this clay down. Again, I'm trying to avoid touching it all, that top. Because once I break that and once I kind of mess that up, it's so hard to get in there and clean it up. It's just much easier if we don't touch it. Okay, so there's my bottom eyelid, nice and smoothed into the plane of the face. Woo. Okay, now I'm going to go for my top eyelid. Same sort of thinking. I'm going to just take a bit of clay. I can always have extra, that's fine. I'm going to start to create a coil in my hand. Use the table to finish my coil. I want it to be a point at one end and a little bit thicker towards the other end. Okay, so now here we're going to overlap again, and I do want these 2 points to meet, right? That would be where my tear duct is, right here. Okay, so I want these to meet. I'm going to just gently lay it down to kind of get my positioning. Okay, so we can see that's kind of pretty good. You see quite a bit of my eyeball. I think my lower eyelid probably could have covered more of my eye, so I might redo that later. Okay, all right, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to compress this down, take off this excess here. Generally, what you're going to see on most people is this top eyelid is going to go over the bottom eyelid. So that's why I do the bottom one first. And I just try to smooth the top one over the bottom one. Not a lot. just going to gently push this down. Again, I don't want to touch the inner curve. Okay, so that's our basic eye. Again, it looks a little funky, but once we go to color this, we can color in the iris and the pupil, and that tends to look a bit nicer. Now, one area that sometimes we might want to adjust is this area between the eyelid and the brow line. If you're finding that that's too big of a space, you can add another little coil in here, smooth that in, and that's good to go. Another little thing that might be helpful is if we grab a paintbrush, because sometimes your fingers are a little clunky and can't get in there. So if we just take a paintbrush and some water, this is a nice tool for refinement, okay? So we can take a nice paintbrush and work that in there, smooth out any imperfections that might have been left from our fingers. Okay, this is the last stage that I would work on. Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave that one eyeball. We'd want to repeat that for the other side. Okay, now let's move on to the mouth. Mouth is is similar in that we're going to use coils. We're going to use 2 coils for the mouth. Okay, a nice general little measurement for the mouth as well is that the mouth will be, for the most part, on most people, you can look at your own face in the mirror, but it's going to be about the width if you drew a line down from the middle of your eyes. Okay, so our mouth is going to be about here. Okay, so we can just kind of do a general hello, there we go. Okay, so with the mouth, I'm gonna again score that area just lightly. Okay, get myself some clay. I'm gonna do the top lip first. Okay, let's see. So grab about this much clay, and again, this might take a few tries. I think that's always okay, is to try it. If you don't like it, you can cut it off, you can try it again, okay? But I'm gonna start with a little ball, same technique. I'm gonna start with a little coil, but with this coil, I want it to be symmetrical. I don't want one side to be thinner than the other, so I'm gonna just kind of carefully in my hands work that coil. And so if you do look at your mouth, you'll tend to notice that the middle is fatter, and then as it extends out, it gets pretty thin. And we all have different sort of lips. Some people have more voluptuous, fatter lips, some have thinner lips, some, so kind of take that into account as you go. But for the most part, I guess the big mistake here, right? We always talk about those things that I've seen over and over. One of the things that I've seen a lot is the duck lips, right? People tend to assume that the lips have a lot of volume and you get these like monster like stick out lips, when really in reality our lips, they meld into our face, more than we would maybe assume just from going, okay? So the lips don't need a ton of volume. So I'm going to measure that out. It needs to be a little bit wider. Okay, and again, it's thinning out at the edges. All right, so I scored this. I'm going to give it a light spray. I'm going to get that placed. That's about right for me. Okay, the first attachment I want to do is right in the middle. So I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to smooth this right into the center towards the nose. Right? Okay. And then, again, just like the eyelids, I don't want to touch the bottom curve, right? Because I want to keep that nice, smooth curve of the lip, but I do want to attach it right into the face because the top of our lip just extends into our face. So I'm just going to pull this top clay up into the face. Trying really hard not to touch or alter the curve of the bottom. I do think too, just a resting sort of face tends to be like a gentle M. So you have like a down here, so it kind of goes up and then down and then up, a gentle M shape, right? So I try to get that into my mouth. Okay. All right, continue to smooth that out. Okay, now I'm going to do the bottom lip. Bottom lip is just a little coil again. Bottom lip tends to be a little bit less wide, and so the top lip goes over the bottom lip. So it tends to be a little bit fatter and a little bit less wide. Now that changes if you smile, it tends to stretch out. So it depends on the facial expression that you want. But again, tapered at the edges. And just kind of place it in there, see if it fits. Ooh, that's a big fat bottom lip. We'll go with it though. We'll see if that looks okay. Okay, again, I'm just gonna give a light score and a light spray. That should work okay. Place my bottom lip. Again, I don't want to touch that inner curve, but I do want to smooth the bottom curve into the face. And it does seem that I did use quite a bit of clay for my bottom lip, so it's a nice big fat pouty pouty lip. So this might be something that I'd want to work on as well. Okay, but again, same as with my eyes, I could use a brush with water and I could refine some of those soft curves. I can even work on the inside of my mouth a little bit and continue to refine and smooth. Okay, now that's a general mouth, resting eye sort of look. Okay, really briefly, let's talk about a closed eye. All right, I have a lot of students ask about that. So instead of a eyeball, two coils, I tend to just do one big almond shape for the top eyelid. Okay, and you can practice this, but when we close our eyes, we really only see the top eyelid. We don't even see the bottom eyelid too much. Okay, so I tend to create like an almond shape or football shape. All right, that's going to be my top eyelid. I'm not going to do this too perfectly, but I would smooth this in. And then the bottom eyelid is a very, very thin coil. And that would get smoothed in also. And that's a very general closed eye. Okay, so if that's something you want to practice, of course we'd smooth this in, but that would be closed eyes. Okay, all right, so go ahead and practice those. They're gonna probably take a try or two, and that's okay. Remember, I can slice these off at any time and I can retry, no big deal. Okay, so get some good practice in. Again, more exaggerated expression is always more interesting, so give that a shot too and give that some thinking.